I cannot wait to see the comments on this.
This is a gold mine for internet input. It's gonna be great.
I think there are so many people upset right now about so many games being thrown out there, but I don't know that anyone is going to be more upset than people at ManofRohan for calling Fable not an RPG. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the inaugural episode of Skip the Dialogue, where I am joined by ManofRohan and Desrin Does, where I will bring up the most contentious and annoying and frustrating things happening in RPGs and MMOs, and we'll all just fight each other and be mean to each other. Right?
Right.
Okay.
That was the memo I got. So
let's get the elephant out of the room real quick. Before we even get into our subject that we're doing today, we've all been fired, right? Like, that's why we're here.
It feels like it.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I was really going into real life and I'm like, yeah, I was just like 6 months ago and not actually fired. But.
True.
But no, I was really let go. They restructured. But no, I see what you mean. Yes, we have.
Yeah, so we have been restructured out of Pantheon Plus, at least for the time being, right? Because the PTV, Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, Parting the Veil, is no longer happening, at least for the foreseeable future, which is where you may have seen the three of our faces before on the Parting the Veil podcast.
Veal. It's delicious.
Yeah, veal.
See, this is why I do VOD content where I can edit my shit out and sound smarter than I am. But the question today is going to be, what is an RPG? That question can be a bit contentious, and it's come up more recently with Final Fantasy XVI, but it's not exactly a new question. It is a very polarizing question with lots of people with different opinions. So let's start with Desrin. What is an RPG to you?
Okay, so I joked that I was going to do this, be extremely literal. So an RPG is a role-playing game. So if you're playing a role, it's an RPG. No, it's a little more complicated than that. And I think that's why this gets a little bit contentious, is because people for a long time have started to associate certain game mechanics with RPG, right? Like you have like maybe even levels. Levels might be an RPG thing. But then you have to ask, like, if a game has levels, is it an RPG? So there's a lot of different things that people are going to bring to this question as I don't know if I want to say baggage, because that sounds kind of negative, right?
It's just a little negative.
But I think this is a great question because we all kind of have our own idea of what an RPG is. And while I kind of joke about the whole, while you're playing a role, it's RPG, I do lean in that direction, though. Because to me, there's a lot of specific mechanics that I could see why people relate to the term RPG. But for me, RPG is really anything that drops me into a life or a role of a character, and lets me play out that whole whatever they would want to do. Because I also, at least in the past, I've done role play in like text and not a lot of like RL stuff, but I used to really enjoy it because I would refer. Well. LARPing, everything's real life on some end of the computer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I used to refer to it as interactive storytelling. And when we get into a game, it's a little less interactive, but I still see it in a way of like, I have a one-directional role-playing opportunity. And And that's kind of how I embrace those games. So whether I can define you can almost define every game as an RPG with that. And I get that's like very loose. It's very loose. But that's kind of my baseline there is I'm playing something out that's different from me.
Kind of feels like as you got towards the end of that, you came back to the literal response at the beginning of like you play a role and that's what it is. Just like the broadest thing you could possibly come up with is what a role-playing game is, right?
It's a big bucket for me.
Well, but that's most games, like unless you're playing checkers. Like I don't know what it's like to be a plastic disc, you know. So
you just have to use your imagination a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, you king them, right? You king, you know. But no, I most games that at least I enjoy playing, you're usually playing a anthropomorphic something. So it's either a human or a humanoid type person, or you're playing a cat. You know, there's that Stray game,
that's
or
great.
whatever.
Game's great.
Oh, I actually haven't played it, but it looked cool. You know, but yeah, I mean, I totally see what you're saying. I get what you're saying. And I mostly agree. I think there are specific things that, and it's probably grown in the telling, but the original ish, I'm not totally sure. There are a couple that came before. I just don't remember their names, but it came before the Dungeons and Dragons games. Even Gary Gygax had something right before that and built Dungeons and Dragons off of that. I think, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but
I'm sure they will.
Yeah. Yes, they definitely will if they are into it as much as that. But you know, that is definitely, I am now this person. The choices I make in this game, I am making as this person, and it brought in progression because, like you say, there are levels, and that is definitely a part of role playing. You're not just like getting new weapons or getting new, although that's been brought in too. You know, New World and such. You know, that is a progression that can happen and has been gamified certainly. But I always look at role playing as progression. You know, there's always I'm growing myself as a character in this story. And there are things I can't do right now, but when I progress, I will be able to do them. And that's usually how I think of role playing. Because you know, in the most strict way, of course, I am being that person in the Dungeons and Dragons or a lot of the tabletop games. But I didn't really experience that much growing up. I played Dungeons and Dragons a bit. People got real heated, and I was like, I think I'm done with this for a while. You know, I've got a couple stories that I'll save for another time, but you know, I'm like, there are some intense people, but
now I want to know these intense stories at some point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just the very quick version is one guy was looking for, it was a group I didn't play with normally. I was just kind of filling in on a Saturday because they needed a full group. So I said, okay, I'll come over and I'll bring my sheet. And there was just some homebrew campaign, and the dungeon master, or rather this guy was looking for a key, and he had been for like 3 Saturdays, and he finally found it. And then in the same session, he lost it. The dungeon master made him lose it. Like he said, it was stolen by a bandit or something. I can't remember what happened, but he lost it. And this guy flipped out. He jumped up on the table and is screaming at the dungeon master.
Oh my gosh.
He was really, really pissed. And I'm like, this is not for me. this kind of intensity.
That's the kind of thing that I would want to see in like a satire. Like,
yeah. So
I need to add some context here. How old was this person?
Oh, we were in high school. It was okay. It was, yeah.
That makes it a little
like 15.
That makes it a little better. Like in my head, I don't know
Yeah.
why I was thinking like 25.
No,
man,
yeah, no.
just like, how dare you? How dare you do this to my character?
That's exactly what it was, and he was, and I didn't play with them anymore, but, so that kind of role, and I see how people, they bring it on to themselves. Like, this is now me, and everything that happens within this game, it's happening to me personally. So, I took us off in a strange direction, but as far as what I think of role playing games, I think the core of it for me is progression. So
It's interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, and that works, and it ties into it, right? I don't think you can really divorce like tabletop role playing games from video game role playing games, because there's so much to it. And I think playing tabletop role playing games is what made role playing make more sense to me, because playing a game like Dungeons and Dragons, where I had to kind of come up with everything myself, I had to find the role, think about who I was rather than the game telling me who I was. Because when I started playing games, in the late 90s, the early 2000s, you were really being told more often than not who you were in the game. I've been playing Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance recently. You pick from set characters, and it's not the same thing as with like a Baldur's Gate 3 coming out, where you are creating your own character and making the decisions that way. So I think playing those role playing games really brought home to me just how important like decision making is in a role playing game, at least for me. Because if you're playing a role, like Des was saying, it could really be applying to everything, but playing the role to me is more about choosing where that role goes. So a game like Baldur's Gate 3, where you have impact on it, versus Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, there's more of there's less impact on how you can change things. You're more on rails, I guess is the best way to put it. But then if I stick too close to that, then I basically take out like 80% of role-playing games, and I'm focusing on the ones that just focus, like I'm focusing on like BioWare games and Larian games, and that's about it.
Okay.
So
sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I just, something that you guys are kind of like touching on that is, I don't know, tweaking my brain a little bit here, is this idea of constraint being a huge part of role playing. The idea that you are forced into a specific character that has, things that it can and cannot do. I'll admit it's something I'm a little passionate about when it comes to like playing tabletop RPGs, because I think everyone that's played a tabletop game has played with folks or been the folks that they don't constrain themselves and they just kind of do whatever they feel like, rather than adopt an actual role. And I think a lot of people can probably ascribe to just how annoying that is. Right. So, but when it comes to a video game, is it the same? Because the opposite of that would be, I guess, a sandbox where just like you can do anything. And then I guess the question would be, can you have a sandbox RPG?
You take away so much of the game part of a role-playing game if you don't constrain in some way, even in sandbox RPGs, I was going to mention Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild a little bit, because they are very open. You can get a lot of places and you're limited by your strength in being able to deal with those situations. So there is constraint there, but the things around you are gamified. It's not like I can just do anything I want. I can just immediately go and kill anything I want because there's no restraint. I don't like those guys. Like, yep, I just killed this guy. What? You have to roll for it. That's the constraint, right? In the tabletop, you got to roll.
I was going to say, what if you add in consequence, right? So a game that I was going to bring up is just to kind of like blow this open is Grand Theft. I can speak. Grand Theft Auto. So Grand Theft Auto, you essentially do play a role, right? And you can choose to do things. You can make different decisions, but they have consequences, whether you're playing the single player story or playing online. There's a reason why GTA RP became such a huge thing on Twitch, because you could slot into different roles, and it was literal role playing of the game. But in the actual game itself, it's really a lot more. It can be a lot more sandboxy, right? You can go and you don't have to follow the missions. You can go do other things, but there's going to be consequences to your actions. So I think that ties into another part of role playing to me, where the world has to feel reactive to you, reactive to the decisions. And so that's kind of works with with a traditional RPG where you make a decision. So in Dragon Age Origins, I get so much constant shit for it because I chose to kill Isolde in the beginning. And sorry if that's a spoiler. The game is like 15 years old at this point, but I made that decision, and in making that decision, I actually had to pick two different things that were going to happen. I thought it was two choices, actually three choices. But by doing that created ripple effects to my character and their interactions with other characters throughout the whole game. Like, it was one decision I made that caused had consequences. So I think a world with consequences is kind of essential to me, to an RPG, as like the basis of it. Like, you have that, and then you can build up from there. Then you can get into the whole leveling up process and all that stuff, all the mechanical stuff. But having a world that reacts to you specifically and your choices, I think, is what makes a role playing game to me at the most base level.
So something that's completely on rails, like I'm trying to think. Man, actually, I'm struggling to think of a game that's completely on rails. Actually,
there's not that many anymore.
Wasn't Dragon Age 2 pretty raily?
That's
now here we go. Like, I was thinking of like a walking simulator, which is it's growing in popularity. I know it's a funny term, but like that's what the genre is called.
Okay, wait.
But where you don't really make decisions, you just kind of go forward, and the story is told to you.
I've got a really good one for that then, and I'm not sure which way to do it. Have either of you played Outer Wilds?
Oh yeah, okay. I know we've connected on this.
Yes, is Outer Wilds a role playing game? You don't necessarily make any decisions. The world doesn't necessarily react to you at all. And I'm going to avoid any spoilers on this. If you have not played Outer Wilds, you need to play Outer Wilds. It is a fantastic game. And the funny thing is, it is perhaps the game that had the strongest emotional reaction for me at the end of it. And I don't know if that part of it was because I didn't have a role. I was still immersed in the game, but I wasn't it's almost like I want to call it a role playing game, but not at the same time. It doesn't have any of the things you would expect in a role playing game.
Yeah, it's more of it's a story.
It's like a Telltale game.
Telltale games. Now there we go. That's a good call out.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting. Bring up there because I never would have thought of Outer Wilds in that fashion, because you are obviously you're actively like solving the puzzles and stuff, but there's really only one way to go, and the story is amazing and the reveals are amazing, but
they are. It's like you're uncovering a mystery. So you're in that sense, your role could kind of essentially be the detective, right?
Yeah. But at the same time, I don't feel like you're connected to the main character in the same way. That's a little hard to make tangible.
I don't know if I buy you only have one way makes it not role playing. Because one of my all-time favorites is Phantasy Star the original. And that is there is only one way to progress through the entire game. There are ways you can go and fight. You're going and grinding because it's an old school RPG. So it's, there's lots and lots of just running back and forth from this place to this place and fighting things, but you have to do it this way. You have to ask the person 3 times to get the book. You have to go, you got to do that. You have to go in this direction. There's no other choices. Granted, it was early on, but it definitely holds a strong place in my little RPG heart. It's nostalgia, some of it for sure, but it's still, I play it today. Like I'll go and, every few months, every year and a half, I'll go and I'll play through it. And it's still really fun. So, and then giant RPGs like Skyrim, they have things talking about the world reacting to you. Doggone it. If I beat this dragon, why do people still treat me like I haven't beat the dragon?
Hey, that's not to say that RPG worlds are perfect.
I go into the town
issue.
No, that is a Bethesda issue. No, you go and I literally beat the last guy, and you can continue on, right? And I go to the town, and this everyone knew. Everyone should know that I don't. Is it old enough that I can spoil it? I'll just say
I think with the amount of Skyrims
releases,
we have, we're past that point.
I was thinking about playing it again, actually. Go ahead.
Only spoil the 10th anniversary edition.
Okay. Oh man, well they got a lot of DLC and stuff in there, so maybe. But they, when you win, and you can go back and play and just do whatever you want, no one says a thing. They're still talking about their knees wounded. They're treating you like you're just some guy. I'm like, I just saved all your, and I'm like, I am the king of this entire game, and they should have put that in.
So basically, what you're saying is that's not a part of being an RPG. Then the world reacting.
I think it is, but I'm just mad that they didn't do it.
Oh, so I think like in that, like there's like the macro is there are parts of it that didn't react to you. But the micro is there are definitely parts that do react to you.
Yeah.
If you steal something, the world reacts to you. Right. So like it's not just like the big world events that it has to react to, but also the small things. And as we're doing this whole conversation, like shit, there's actually a big problem with my thought process of the world reacting to you, because there have been plenty of RPGs I've played in the past that you don't like. The choices don't necessarily matter because you're following a linear storyline. And one of my favorites is Final Fantasy X. And that's like, stuff's going to happen. You're just all kind of along for the ride. The world is necessarily like reacting. It's changing, but it's not to your decisions. It's to the game's script. Right?
Yeah. It's just that the game's getting further along. So in that sense, though, Outer Wilds is an RPG, even though you're kind of just like along for the ride.
I could see the argument for it, right? Like that's the thing is like and that's why I think this subject is really interesting of what is an RPG, because the more you dig into these type of things of like genre defining things, you struggle to come up with a single answer, because it's like, well, there's this game that's an outlier, but you feel that it is an RPG. Right. Or this game that may not be, but it still feels like it has some of this stuff in it.
Yeah, it's just like porn. You know it when you see it.
Exactly.
Not the example I would have used, but yeah.
I mean, there was actually some famous cases, Supreme Court cases in the past, where a justice said, "You know it when you see it." Talking about indecent, and it's hard to define. There are many things that come together, but when you're playing, there are elements that it's very hard to diagram. But again, I come back to progression. Is there progression in the game where I couldn't do something, and it's just not just my skill? Like there's something that I'm stopped from doing, and I have to figure out through some sort of puzzle, through some sort of, I have to meet people and talk with people. I have to travel. I have to gain a better weapon of some sort, yeah, if there's, go ahead.
So because at first when you're talking about progression, we're kind of talking about like levels and like gaining power. And that's kind of where that's where it settled in my brain. But when you're talking about progression, you mean like any kind of progress, like story progress.
Yeah.
And also character progress and all that. Okay.
That does,
would it be easier to say?
Are we back to Dez's whole like anything where you play a role then? Because any progress would be like any game.
Well, so I was going to start to try to throw in some things that like we can agree are not RPGs.
Pong.
Or let's try. Well, okay, Pong.
Yeah.
You're a paddle.
For sure.
You're obviously a paddle. You're playing the role of a paddle. No. But like for some reason, what popped into my head was arena games like Fall Guys or I almost said Call of Duty or like shooters, but then that's tough.
We're getting this is getting kind of like way.
What isn't an RPG?
This is getting way out there, but I think we just found the title for this episode. Is Pong an RPG? And I think that's how we'll title the episode. So thank you for that, Des.
Well, the only progression in Pong is the score. And wait,
isn't that tangible?
In one version, no, hold on. Hear me out. In one version of Pong, your paddle gets bigger. It gets wider, so it's easier for you to win.
That sounds like an RPG to me.
It's an RPG.
If it's porn, you see it, right?
Right.
You know when you see it.
I feel it on the inside. It's an RPG.
Don't follow up that comment with that comment, please.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Let's cut that. Oh, man. Let's cut that out. I didn't mean that like that.
Seriously, though, like on these credentials, like what can you guys think of that is like concrete for sure, not an RPG, but it's still like a video game, like pop quiz. Racing games.
There's plenty of racing games that have a career mode where you're progressing through a story within that, and you're getting upgrades. You're essentially leveling up your driving skills or your car, getting different parts.
Playing the role of a car.
or the driver.
We're role playing.
This is Jason, the Wheeled Warrior. Maybe any of the like Battlefield games, or there's a lot of shooters where you progress, you're getting new weapons and things like that. But what's the point of winning even in a campaign mode? Are the choices you're making, are you progressing that and the world progresses with you? Maybe that's a little bit better.
So it's got to be more than just like a score.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I came into this thinking, okay, this is going to be an interesting conversation. And I was like, I kind of have an idea in my head of what an RPG is. I think I know less what an RPG is now than when we started this.
That's why we're not clarifying anything here. We're actually ruining it for everyone.
I keep coming up in my head with reasons why what I just said was wrong.
That's the thing. Like, I gave this whole like the baseline of every RPG for me is when the world is reactive to you, and I'm like, that's all bullshit. None of that makes any sense anymore. Like I am backtracking in my own head the things that I've already said. I'm like, no, that doesn't work. It doesn't work in this case or this case or this case. I'm like, this is actually a more difficult question than I thought it was going to be.
this podcast is an RPG. We have started in one place and we have developed
Have we
into
progressed?
a new place.
Do we really think we progressed so far?
We've digressed.
There's a lot of spinning, a lot of
We've
regressing.
regressed. Does that count as an RPG?
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
okay.
Backwards RPG.
Okay, well then let's talk about a more recent one
Mm-hmm.
and that I've been playing with my daughter. She loves stories, so anything that is story based, we play together, and she just watches me play, or she'll play the story version because she doesn't care about the battles so much. Like Final Fantasy VII Remake, she played through the story or the easier mode. But she watched the first week I had it. She watched through it. Now Final Fantasy XVI just came out. I say just. People have already have the videos. This is the best, ending, or this is the best game, or whatever they're saying, that I'm really trying to avoid because I haven't played really that far. And it is definitely has RPG elements to it, but it so far is really on rails. Like you can almost, I just got to a part where I can go further than 30 feet from the path. And the camera literally points you at where you're going. And I'm getting all ticked off because I'm like, let me run off to the left. And it keeps pointing me back. So, I'm having a lot of fun with it, and it's action. It's action. It's an action RPG for sure. I'm only playing I'm only playing the main character. I'm not playing several or being able to switch through them like I'm used to in a traditional Japanese RPG. But it's still an RPG because it's one of the deepest stories I've ever experienced in a game, by the way, anyone who hasn't played it yet, if you want to play it. The most depressing story, one of the most depressing. So, if you want to feel bad a little bit, play it. But it's absolutely an RPG, but because you can make new weapons, you get things, the things that you're experiencing are happening to the world and you, and it's not, I'm just chunking through levels and I'm, even though there are chapters, which I've always hated that about RPGs, calling them chapters. I'm like, it's not, then you're giving me an end. You're already telling me there's an end because there's a chapter. So anyway.
Do you prefer acts or is that the same
what
thing?
now?
Do you prefer acts? Act 1, Act 2.
I thought you meant Axe body spray. No, I don't prefer that either.
No one prefers that.
I do have a 16-year-old, and he definitely has those types of.
Does that still
sprays.
Exist? Axe still exists?
I don't know, but he has things that smell like what I would have said was Axe. No, I don't like it because it already tells me there's an end. Maybe I got really spoiled by things that don't seem to have an end, like EverQuest 2, or other MMOs, because those are RPGs for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Or they wouldn't be called Morbs.
I've never actually heard someone say it like that.
Not to be too upsetting about it, but they do technically have an end. It's just the end comes when they cease to be profitable. That's when those
That's true.
Oh,
Where's the sad music?
I just got done covering Warhammer Online closing.
yeah.
That's
so in that sense, does an RPG have to have a story?
I would see, and I was going to try and condense this into what I think most people would say the general feeling behind what an RPG is. And I would say that it has a story. It has some sort of character progression, whether that's leveling up, attributes, gear, those kind of things. And you have some sort of decision making in some way, not necessarily, it's a decision that's going to alter everything, but decision as in it's something as simple as an Elden Ring. Do I go this class or this class? So that's where I think like having a decision is somewhat important. Final Fantasy X, your decision was who you bring into the party. You know, some kind of the way that you play the game will be even a tiny bit different based on your decisions. I think maybe I want to take that decision part out, but definitely the story. I'm already back. Like that's the fastest backtrack, but a story and progression. Yeah.
So to kind of total things up, we've got a character, or at least one character that you, I guess, I don't know, adopt as your point of reference. I don't know how to put that, but that's, you're playing a role. So character, story, and decisions or some sort of direction. Maybe direction is the better way to put it, because that kind of covers a little bit of progression, to be broad.
Yeah.
It's just every time I list one of these things out, I'm like, in my head, I'm trying to think of, okay, so what's the exception? Like
Pong.
Pong.
Pong
Get a bigger
Paddle
paddle.
gets bigger.
Paddle gets bigger.
I think we can kind of, we're at a point, I think, where we can kind of wrap up this subject. How do you all want to wrap up what the hell is an RPG?
I that's my question. Like, that's how I like to wrap it up. I don't know.
So we
What is
essentially
it?
spent 30 minutes circling around a question, backtracking on ourselves, and getting to the point where we're asking if every single game ever made is an RPG.
Hey, I'm still trying over here a little bit. Because if anything, I'm trying to define it in, like we were saying, the character, story, and direction. I don't know if an RPG has to have all three of those, but pretty close. But by that definition, there's the Steam RPG library is about to expand quite a bit. So, but like maybe that's the point. Maybe that's the point, is more things should be labeled as RPGs. Maybe it's broader than people are defining it. Because let's be real, like this conversation kind of came up because of a little bit of the discourse over Final Fantasy XVI, right?
Yes.
So to combat that, I'm saying no. Y'all are wrong. It is an RPG, and so is so much more. That's my take.
Including Pong.
Including Pong. Well, I don't know. I don't.
Let me roll back to thousands of years ago, or deep into the primordial humans, and we've enjoyed stories our entire existence, right? So as a species, so that's because it is a story. I think we could say that a lot of things, if we're saying story is a big part of it, a lot of things could be a role-playing game, because I am invested in the story enough to say I identify with this character, but I think you need to be making choices as that character or something. Like I think
control. There's some aspect of control that you need.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think there are other things with stories. I think of one of my favorite, like The Longest Journey and Dreamfall chapters. Those are
the Funcom RPGs.
Yeah, I really liked those. Definitely not RPGs. They're puzzle, but they're really story heavy. They're definitely not RPGs to me. Even though you are a character and you do go through the story and you do make some choices, like depending on who you talk to, certain things happen or don't happen. But also Minecraft, which is not an RPG, although
Minecraft isn't an RPG?
No. They have RPG mods.
Oh no. That just spawned something in my mind, and I wish it hadn't. And now, like, is Roller Coaster Tycoon an RPG? Because you are playing a role. There is very clear progression. I don't know that there's a story, but you are playing a role.
I would say that the disqualifying factor for Roller Coaster Tycoon is that there is no end point. I think no.
So an
I don't want
RPG
to say
has to have an
fictional,
end.
but what I'm saying is there's a narrative of some kind.
There is no real narrative in a game like that. In any kind of life simulation type game like that, they don't really necessarily have a narrative.
Yeah.
Otherwise Sims becomes an RPG, and so does Zoo. What is it? Not Zoo Tycoon. The new one.
At least we're canceling some things out here, like because that's if we're trying to define something, we have to, define things that it's not.
We're going to cancel ourselves out here because everyone's going to be pissed at us for trying to define games that are, to many people, clearly not RPGs as RPGs.
I want to see someone make a case for Roller Coaster Tycoon being an RPG.
If you're watching this on YouTube, please make a case for why Roller Coaster Tycoon is an RPG, because I would love to read it.
I do love Roller Coaster Tycoon. So I was saying I do love Roller Coaster Tycoon.
It's a good game.
And Planet Coaster.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I do not like 2 and 3. Let me just make that clear to everyone listening.
Isn't Planet or Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 like the worst game ever made or something like that?
It's on the top. I mean, it's in the top list. Yes, I'm sure. And I owned it. I don't know if I bought it or if I pirated it, but I had it whenever it came out. And I mean, I'm not going to jail. This is like decades later when it, but. I hope I'm not going to jail.
There's a statute of limitations there, so
I'm not. I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to jail. No, but yeah, man, those are great games. I love them. And then Planet Zoo is maybe the one you were thinking of.
Yeah, Planet Zoo, the basically the spiritual successor to all the Tycoon games.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, so we've got control, we've got narrative. Which we've got not progression, direction.
A direction, yeah.
A direction, whatever form that takes.
I do think character progression is a very important part to an RPG, though. Some sort of character progression.
If that's the case, though, like, and I assume when you're saying character progression, you mean like some kind of like stats or gear or something, right?
Yeah, stats or gear.
So then you have disqualified Outer Wilds.
And I think I'm okay with that. Like, thinking about it that way, I feel like to be as narrow as sometimes necessary for a genre, having character progression as a key tenet of an RPG might help narrow it down and get rid of some of this other stuff when you combine it with the other things. When you combine it with narrative or story. And I
don't want to get rid of those.
I know you don't, because you want everything to be an RPG.
Everything is an RPG, except for Tycoon games.
Maybe those that love RPGs just want all the rest of the games to be RPGs so that we don't feel like we've betrayed the RPGs. Like,
well, I'll tell you the great news, because this channel covers MMORPGs and RPGs. So my potential catalog that I could cover just got much larger. I mean, I can't wait to make a video on Roller Coaster Tycoon next week. It's going to be awesome.
Well, it depends. If someone makes a good case for it, you're obligated now.
You know what? If someone makes a good case for it, I will turn it into a YouTube short.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear it
here.
I mean, there are goals, to reach.
Well, goals. I don't think goals are the same as direction.
I know.
Yeah.
My direction is to the end of the game, like to the next. Can I unlock the next map? That's why 2 sucked, because you already got all the maps. You could just choose one. I didn't have to. There is progression in 1 because I have to unlock some stuff.
Oh,
See,
no.
I
All right.
like, I'll be totally honest. Like, if there was a game that had a story and a main character that I got to control, whether there were any choices that actually like impact anything differently, like basically whether the choices matter or not, even if I'm just clicking like A and it progresses throughout the story, it's just clicking A is the entire game, but it tells like a good story. I think I'm going to call that an RPG. I think I am.
You know what I almost don't call an RPG? Fable.
How
Oh,
dare
no.
you? How dare? Okay, I didn't think we were going to fight
How
on the show.
No,
but
excuse me. Excuse
Well,
me.
Because you've been hitting on the choices, and I'm like, I felt like there were almost no choices. You in that game, the first one. I actually haven't played the other two.
You felt like there was
But-
no choices in Fable.
No,
Des, are
No.
you okay?
you could literally only do one thing.
What?
When you would do a thing, you could only do one thing. I mean, they had those like side missions, but I could only do one thing. So
never been so hurt. That's I like. So I didn't have an Xbox, and I had to play Fable at a friend's house.
mhm.
But I can't disagree. Like I felt like I was really like that was the game that I felt like my choices mattered more than any other game at the time, actually.
Wow. But we were, you know what? It's because I'm salty because Peter Molyneux lied his face off to all of us. If you use your right arm more, it's going to get stronger.
Okay, it wasn't to that extent or whatever, but like it was still beyond
No,
what I
you're
had
right.
played. I don't know. But it's that same generation though. Gears of War. Absolutely an RPG. Same time frame. I played it at my same friend's house. Totally an RPG. 100% linear. All you do is shoot stuff. But narrative direction, you're a defined character that you control. Counts, man. It counts.
The comments on this.
This is a gold mine for internet like input. It's gonna be great.
I think there are so many people upset right now about so many games being thrown out there, but I don't know that anyone is going to be more upset than people at ManofRohan for calling Fable not an RPG.
Well, that's the engagement. That
I think
Did we
maybe
just
that's
change
what
the
it
title?
was. And the story, like there were a couple of cool beats. Like I liked how you got caught, and then you were in a jail for a year, right? I'm like, oh, I was in there for a year? Wow, that's interesting. And my sister grew up and she's evil. You know, sort of. And I'm giving away the game for people who haven't played it. Sorry.
it's
How
only
many
been
games-
like
how-
20 years.
How many games have you spoiled so far, ManofRohan?
I spoiled this one and Skyrim. No, I didn't, because I just said when you beat it. You're right.
No, you
Yeah,
spoiled.
yeah.
You're missing one that you spoiled. You spoiled Pong.
Oh,
The paddle gets bigger.
Yep.
I didn't
Hey.
know that.
I didn't either.
You
If you
spoiled that
guys
for
wouldn't-
both of us.
Yeah, you just, I don't know if either of you are old enough to have played it.
I played Snake on my phone. That's how old I am.
I have played a Pong console, but not during the time. Obviously, I am too young for that.
Well,
so-
the Atari 2600 was released the year I was born. So I'm a little too young as well. Just
There
a
you
little
go.
bit. But I have played it.
Before
Anyway.
I get to the point where I am calling Snake a RPG, because there is progression and character progression on it, I think we should wrap up this episode.
But is there narrative? There's no narrative. It's not an
There's no
RPG.
narrative. We're gonna wrap
But
up
I
this
identify
episode.
with that snake. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Desrin, where can people find you?
Generally speaking, you can find me mostly on Pantheon.plus. But at the same time, since that's kind of slowing down right now, you can just find me on Twitter at DesrinDoes. Just for now till more projects start popping up, you know.
And ManofRohan.
You can find me at ManofRohan / whatever on YouTube. When I don't know.
YouTube.com/ManofRohan.
That's it.
I'll call you out because like people actually need to go to your channel. You actually have stuff on there. And
I will eventually have more. I've been very slow at getting things done, but there's got very distracted. People are texting me. But there are lots of things that have gone in my life recently, and I've got music to write, so that's coming soon. But soon is relative. What does soon mean? I don't know. It means sometime.
We've all been affected by the word soon in one way or another.
Oh yes, but also Pantheon Plus. We every Thursday night ish, mostly we play and we stream. So right now we're playing EverQuest 2 and just kind of enjoying some oldish school stuff. And EverQuest 2 was my jam. That was my favorite, is my favorite MMO. So I'm happy to do it.
Awesome. And I'm Redbeard Flynn. Everywhere you find Redbeard Flynn is going to be me, including on this channel. And thank you all so much for joining us for the inaugural episode of What, Des?
You'll see.
Oh no.
It's an inside joke between me and ManofRohan until you see it. So
oh no.
I'm sorry to mess up the outro, but play EQ2 with us, Red. You'll see.
Okay. So we'll see you all again soon. Plan is to make this monthly, and we'll have it everywhere possible where podcasts can be. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
See you guys.